Welcome to this bite size on leading remotely and supporting staff working from home. When we created the initial remote leadership bite size back in June, we had no idea that we would still be leading in this way nearly 9 months later. Whilst working from home may then have felt quite novel or interesting, even for confirmed introverts like me, it's long since lost its shine and it's starting to feel more like forced isolation. Having said that, some of the content and guidance from that original bite size still holds true, so I'd encourage you to listen or re-listen to it. It's about 17 minutes long and you can access it via the Leading in the Context of COVID-19 and Beyond intranet page. It includes the 3-gear model for remote leadership, choosing our communication tool wisely, the importance of focusing on the message that is received, listening even more carefully, thinking about more than our message, being more intentional, and the importance of followership. Whilst for some of us leading remotely will have been a consequence of the COVID-19 pandemic, for others it will have been familiar, although now occurring in a very unfamiliar circumstance. A useful place to start this time is with a reminder that remote leadership is still first and foremost leadership. This means that many of the skills and tools we already have will continue to be effective, whereas others will want to adjust or apply differently. What makes the difference between remote and distant leadership is communication. This means that our need to communicate effectively with people we're separated from has never been more pressing or important. One of the potential benefits of us having been in this position for so long now is that those we're leading have had plenty of experience of it too, which will hopefully mean that they are clear, or at least clearer, about what works for them and what doesn't, and that they can use that knowledge and experience to support us in giving them what they need. What that means is we don't have to be mind readers to figure it out. We can ask them. Useful questions might include, what would make being led from a distance or working from home more effective for you? What have you already learned that helps? How could you or we build on that? As your leader, what could I do more of or less of or differently? What else could you do? And what would you ask of your colleagues? These questions offer us a starting point for the conversation. We can take this further by thinking about common challenges of remote working, particularly for those working from home. These include lack of face-to-face supervision. Both us and those we lead may experience concerns about the lack of true face-to-face interaction, potentially reducing the amount and effectiveness of support and communication people feel that they're receiving. A perceived lack of access to information. Particularly for those who are new to remote working or working from home, they're often surprised or don't immediately see the benefit of the added time and effort needed to access the information that they need. Social isolation. Loneliness and isolation are common experiences when working remotely. People often miss the informal social interaction they would experience at work, and over time this has the potential to reduce the sense of belonging to a team. Distractions at home. These can be different for all of us, and not all distractions have a negative impact on us or our teams' work. Distractions can include things like children, partners, family members, pets, household chores, or the workspace that people are working in itself. And finally, a sense of less defined boundaries. The loss of that sort of decompression time that used to be generated by the daily commute to and from work, and also that potential temptation of 24/7 access to emails, etc. Let's look at what we can do to address some of these and more effectively support those members of our team who are working remotely. Now, the information we're going to look at now may be a useful reassurance that you're already supporting your teams effectively, or it may suggest some additional actions for us to take. Again, remember that the people who will know most about what may work and what may not are our team members. With that in mind, we may choose to discuss potential changes with them first. So one of the first things we can do is establish structured daily check-ins. Now, where possible, it's about having a daily call with those working remotely, either as a whole team or as a series of one-to-one calls if that feels more appropriate because they're working more independently. What's important is that the calls are regular, predictable and two-way, so they're as much about team members hearing from and being heard by each other as well as receiving information from us. It's also useful to provide several different communication or technology options. I'm sure many of us are now more familiar with Microsoft Teams than we ever imagined we would, or in some cases wanted to be. Internet signal permitting, it enables us to at least see each other, which can help to address the sense of isolation. Having said that, it's still useful to offer a variety of communication methods, so things like telephone, text message, instant messaging, email, etc., depending on the purpose and content of our message, as well as the preferences of those on the receiving end. Ask them what they would prefer. Establishing and agreeing rules of engagement is about agreeing how we want to work and communicate together, and this is really key, is that means that we all end up expecting the same things and can then raise it if these expectations are not being met. It's particularly useful if us as leaders, we share with our teams the best ways and times to contact us and encourage team members to share similar information with each other. Providing opportunities for social interaction. Del Mitchell talks about the importance of this in his leadership interview this week. Some teams have time at the beginning of Teams calls for non-work items, so things like, we're going to spend a few minutes just catching up with each other. How was your weekend? Others opt for virtual coffee breaks. Whilst these types of events may initially feel artificial or forced, experience indicates that these things really help reduce feelings of isolation, promoting a sense of belonging. So think about what else you could do. Offering encouragement and emotional support. Primarily, this is about us listening and empathizing. Sometimes our team members will proactively share any anxieties or concerns with us, and other times we may need to ask them how things are going. Depending on the situation and/or your team dynamic, this can be done either as a one-to-one or in a team setting by asking a question like, how is this remote work situation working out for you so far? Hearing colleagues share experiences, particularly if they're similar to our own, can be really reassuring and will sometimes result in colleagues supporting each other rather than support always needing to come from us as their leader. To support this kind of dialogue and sharing, there are 3 documents attached to this week's Leader and Manager Brief. Or if you're accessing this bite size on the intranet, you can find it on the Leading in the Context of COVID-19 and Beyond intranet page. The documents are My Whole Self, which is guidance for ways to support mental health while working from home. My Whole Selfie, so a way for people to share their authentic selves online. It's a great way to connect with colleagues if they're working remotely. And Reflective Opportunities for Group Sharing, which is a list of questions that may prompt some different conversations. We will all experience different things. Some will be successful and some will be less so. As leaders, the more we share all of our experiences with our peers, the less isolated we will feel and the more we'll learn from one another. Because as leaders, we can be a team too. So to the takeaways from this bite size then. Remote leadership is still leadership, and the skills and experiences we already have will still support us in being effective. Ask the question. Our teams can help us support them even more effectively if we ask them what works and what doesn't. Identify the challenges our teams are experiencing. By having the conversation, we can put our crystal balls away and really understand what's going on and the challenges being faced so that we can discuss options for addressing them. Involving our teams in the solutions will increase the chances of them being effective. Also make use of other resources. We've shared 3 with you today. Think about what you already use. So what you can think about is sharing them. Who else could you or have you shared your things with? Because remember, as leaders, we're a team too. As usual, here are a reminder of all of the other sources of information. If you don't follow us on Twitter, then please do. It's for @NCHC_leaders. And if you've got some feedback about this bite size or any other topics you would like, other leaders you would like to be interviewed, then please email us at leadteam@nchc.nhs.uk. And finally, a reminder of the support available across the NHS more broadly. I look forward to working with you on the next bite size.